Earlier this week, I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday, President Joe Biden declared a state of emergency in the United States regarding the power grid, stating that places as far north as Michigan could see rolling brownouts and blackouts this year. Now, as bad as it is right now in places like Portland, Minneapolis, New York, I cannot imagine how bad it will become if there are large amounts of time that go by with no power in those regions. The criminals that are being let out of there and already have no fear of the law are just going to be salivating, waiting for the opportunity to step up their game. Are you going to be ready? See, this is what the climate people never think about. They're like, well, these are the pains we have to go through to convert over to clean energy. What's going to happen when there's no 911? Yes, that's right, climate activist, liberal. 911 requires an up and functioning power grid 24/7, 365 days a year. Otherwise, it's not really effective. It doesn't work that way. And the psychology is going to change. Once areas begin experiencing times when they know that nobody can call 911, they're going to be a lot more bold, a lot more brazen. And this is going to have to affect the psychology of women, especially who want to continue to stay in those regions. Now, earlier today, we dropped part 4 in our series about shit hits the fan as it regards women. And some have taken issue with it. Some don't completely agree with all of the allegations that I've made. But in today's video, we put together some pretty good scenarios that I think would make a lot of women think, and a lot of men as well. But if you'd like to join us over there, it's only $1 per month. And we have dozens and dozens of videos on many topics. The last 4 have been this particular one. But it's less than $1 a month if you sign up for an entire year. Once again, partnering with Vimeo. Gloves off. We can talk about things like adults should talk about things. And if it's not for you, fully refundable 90 days. We talk about the psychological aspect of being able to behave in a certain way that makes others around you behave differently. Now, this is one of the images that we showed. And when you look at it initially, when people would see this image, they'd be like, oh boy, that guy with a knife, he's got a surprise coming. But anybody who's actually used a ballistic weapon properly would see that she's in trouble. And so I'm like, wait a minute, Flora Maki, how could he has a knife, she has a gun. Haven't you ever heard, don't bring a knife to a gun? With that weapon behind her back in one hand and a purse in the other hand and him at that range, it's very likely, in fact, it's almost 100% likely, he'll be able to get that knife in her before she can get a round off in him. And this was something that was confirmed by one of my viewers who does this type of training. This is Tim Bassett. We've talked about his health training, the workout training. He's a man in his 60s. He's here in Jacksonville, Florida. Absolutely fantastic source of great nutrition advice and exercise advice and staying in shape. But he's also trained with handgun and trains people with handguns. And he agreed by watching that video. He's like, absolutely, she's in huge trouble. With only one hand on that weapon and it being behind her back and at that distance, he's done the math, the calculations. By the time it would take her to get that weapon out and get it up, he could be on her in a matter of less than a second. Now, this is his channel. This is the video he put up earlier today. I had no idea he was going to do this, by the way. Responding to this, 12 June, distance for protection. How to back up. And how to keep your distance with somebody who may only have a knife. But even then, as you can see in this particular case, 2 hands. This looks like at least 6 to 8 feet. This looks much closer. And once again, to kick that gun around and wheel it up and get center mass in the time it takes this guy to make one lunge with that knife? It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So the whole point of it being a psychological operation is you see the picture from an untrained perspective and you have one opinion, whereas the reality is something completely different. And that's what we talk about over at the Patreon channel. And it kind of leads into the main topic of today's video of the idea of being unprepared doesn't mean you don't have a gun. It doesn't mean you haven't been to the range. It doesn't mean you don't have a huge grocery store underneath your house. It doesn't even mean that you don't go to the gym. It's about decision making. Most of the guys that are going to end up in FEMA camps are going to be there talking about how much time they spent at the range and how many things they had stored in the basement. They're going to make one or two bad decisions based on emotion and not thought. And that's what's going to get them wound up in places like this. See, this is something else we talked about over the Patreon channel that's a simple, easy decision. Now, I talk about this in the context of something a woman could do to secure her home in a way that would make her front door almost, for all real intents and purposes, just another wall. Because when you put the bolts in, of course, to the door frame and you throw in the 2x4 to a blocking device like this, nobody's kicking this in. The Incredible Hulk isn't kicking this in. He'll kick the wall, off of the ceiling before you'll kick the door down. And it's simple. It's, I think, $40 for the brackets and maybe $5, $7, $8, $10 for the 2x4. Who knows? But it's a super simple thing to do to install brackets like this, at the doorways to your home. I've never seen a prepper video about it. If someone can show me a prepper video talking about zombie bar bracket installations, I would love to see it. It's a wonderful tool to avoid the conflict. And I think that's why you don't see a lot of preppers talking about it, because most preppers like to talk about what happens when there already is conflict, not how to avoid conflict. One of the things that happened in the medieval world that doesn't happen now is people used to live together in groups, in homes. Very, very few people ever lived alone, or one or two people. Large families lived together. That's what gave them the security, largely in one room. If one person woke up, they all woke up. It was still very difficult to defend because brigands would come at like thief in the night, like the Bible says, yelling and screaming and clanging bells together and causing all sorts of confusion and setting fires. And in a situation like this, it was incredibly hard to see what direction they were coming from. You wouldn't know where to muster forces, and they could pick you off even from the edges. So even staying together in this particular case didn't work. There had to be a plan. That's why the medieval world ended up looking like this. And why you still see today in the 21st century the remnants of castles, guard gates, moats, walls, another wall, the ability to see. Something that has gone by the wayside that I think we're going to see when the grid does collapse is the return of the night watchman. The return of the person, part of your group in your life, that is up at night, keeping a watch. Because you can have dogs and you can have alarms and you can have zombie bars, but something about having another human being awake and around and keeping watch by night is always been the historical default level of protection. And it's something we've largely left to the police, but now with them being so, what's the word I'm looking for? They're slaved to the grid. The police can do what they do because they have access to a fully functioning power grid and repeater towers and they can communicate moment's notice and be anywhere at any time. You take that away, and you're going to need a lot more people. See, at some point, money's not going to matter. Money is not going to matter. And I found this other image. I thought this was a really great image because of some of the advice that I've given over at the Patreon channel. Here's this older guy, right? He basically has a trench gun. Given a choice, this guy has a trench gun. This is a small, short-barreled pump shotgun for his own personal protection. Now, what makes this interesting is that based on looking at the age of this guy, I'm going to guess mid to late 60s, maybe 70s, which would make this guy Vietnam, Korea era, maybe Vietnam for sure. So given a choice of a weapon to protect his home with, out of all the weapons out there, handguns and rifles and AR whatevers, and he chose this, which was just a version of this weapon. This was a weapon that they called it a trench gun. A pump shotgun was called a trench gun in World War I because you could go into a trench, fall down on one of these, and you could slam fire these weapons. And with 3, 5, 6 rounds, you could kill everybody in the trench. Winchester Model 1897, known as the Model M97 trench gun, was a pump-action shotgun with an external hammer and tube magazine manufactured by the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. Due to its high rate of fire through the slam fire function, the weapon received the nickname Trench Sweeper in an ancient war, and is still popular and appreciated by jump back assault troops and veterans today. This goes under the heading of shut up and take my money. Would love to get my hands on one of these. I mean, I have my own shotgun here that's pretty much the same thing, but that this one has a bayonet attachment on it, that is pretty cool. So this is Guns of the World on YouTube, where they demonstrate how fast you can roll rounds off with one of these. And it's not hard to do. So, and as we know, our illustrious leader in Washington, D.C. counseled everyone to buy a shotgun. Not so very long ago. How he counseled people to use it was a little bit idiotic, but such is life. So, anyway, something I wanted to cover real quick right here at the end, since nobody is watching anyway. Some people ask me, Florida Maki, why don't you talk about chemtrails or HAARP or the Illuminati or Flat Earth or anything like that? Because these particular and many other conspiracy theories can be filed under nothing you could do about it anyway, even if you believe in it. Besides, I know the master of the wind. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, what manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? In a very popular hymn, there's a line, no waters can swallow the ship where lies the master of ocean and earth and skies. And this is what we're commanded to do. If it's something where it's just believe this and to be afraid and there's nothing you can do about it, we're commanded to flee from that kind of stuff. If there's something you can be advised about and then there's something you can do, sure, absolutely, look into that. But nothing, even if there were chemtrails, which there's not, there's nothing you could do about it anyway. Let's assume the earth was flat. Anything you could do about it? Does it change one iota of anything in history or your world? No, absolutely not. The Illuminati, secret societies doing this, that, and the other. Even in the Middle Ages, there were people that thought that there were much more powerful people in charge of this and that, and this has been a never-ending thing that nothing can be done about. People somehow think that this is some type of an American thing because of American money. There has always been the allegation of some larger, greater, secret conspiracy force. This was in Europe even before there was the United States. All over the world. So it's why I don't really get into that kind of stuff. So anyway, but what you can do and what you can be prepared for when the lights go out, when there's no 911, that's what we can focus on. Changing your mind so that you can affect good survival. I'll leave it there. God bless. Have a happy Sunday. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.